Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Alexandra Greenberg, and I am the owner of Green Tree Ayurveda, and this is Insight into Wellness. I'm so happy you are here with me, and my guest today is Dr. Kimberly Karuna, and our topic is libido liberation. Kimberly Karuna is a licensed naturopathic doctor, transformational coach, reconnective healing practitioner, and certified holistic pelvic care specialist. She serves as a medical detective, intuitive guide, and transformational coach, helping others identify the underlying root causes behind their health complaints and guiding them on a journey back to wholeness by reestablishing coherence between their mind, body, and soul. Kimberly, we have so much in common when it comes to how we approach and guide our clients. And I am so excited to have this amazing, intense, beautiful conversation with you. Welcome to Insight into Wellness.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about some juicy stuff too.
Yes. So, I really love this topic. I am excited to help women across the board get in touch with their libido liberation. But I want to start just by asking you about you and kind of, if you, when you were younger, were in touch with holistic care, in touch with yourself, or did this come a little bit later in life? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think when I was much younger and, like kind of early teens and younger, I think I was really in touch with myself.
Mm-hmm.
We all come into this world with like this complete embodied knowing that we're enough and that we have these certain graces and we're excited about life. We're excited about ourselves. Like you look at kids and they're just, there's like so much enthusiasm, right?
All of it.
And so, I grew up in a pretty like conventional home, and a lot of that wasn't necessarily exalted or even supported. And I would say that I lost touch with myself and who I really was, and then kind of took on all these different hats and these different roles that I would play both in all of my relationships. And so in that process and, going through different traumas as a kid, my parents got divorced, I moved around a lot, like I didn't have any stability. And so I learned to kind of stay with myself in like a kind of a fierce independence. And so while it might have looked like I was with myself and partnered with myself, it was really not so much that way authentically. Mm-hmm. And, I think that in the process and the journey to getting to where I am today, it's been what I love. The Little Prince talks about in the author Little Prince. It's like remembering, right? It's like, I'm like in this constant unfolding of remembering of what's real, who I really am, and reconnecting to lost parts of myself, right? So I was a really intuitive kid who big feelings, like really big feelings, could feel what was going on with other people. And, that, I'm fine. It's like, someone's not fine. And like, I was very empathic. And so that part I kind of more fell in love with and got in touch with in my later years. But yeah, I think growing up, it's not like to see that I would be where I am today, even in college would be like, what?
How'd I get here? How'd I get here?
Yeah, it's been definitely a journey. And I think that in short, the journey has been, redefining what healthy means, redefining myself in terms of what barometers I'm using, what identifiers I'm using, breaking out of identities. So when I love the word liberation in general, because I think that health is freedom and that we're all seeking deeper aspects of freedom to be ourselves, freedom to speak our truth, freedom to feel loved just as we are, right? Like all of these things that really bind us.
And
on
we
all
might
levels.
not even know that we are searching for that inherently. It might be shadowed, hidden.
Totally.
But when we get to a point where we're like, wow, I want to work on this. This is something that I want for myself.
Yeah.
Enter into liberation.
Yeah. And we all know, I mean, we could talk a whole hour, which we probably won't today, about, what does it take to get there, to wake that up? And oftentimes it's either like a shitload of pain or like so much incredible desire and for something greater, or maybe both,
Yeah.
so.
Being into this topic and really wanting to help women liberate their libido and find themselves and guide them through to that, what in your life, where did that come from? Did you experience needing to liberate your libido, or how did this piece come
Yeah.
to you where you're like, this is it, this is how I want to help?
Yeah, gosh, there's so much I could say to that. Specifically when it comes to like working with women and their sex drive, that kind of came later into my years as a doctor, right? And I started working a lot with women's health. I worked a lot with fertility for a good number of years as a specialty, and I sort of saw like, well, how do we make a fertile body? Like, fertility is vitality. Like, you really don't have a healthy, vital body is fertile,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the idea of even naturopathic and alternative medicine can be a little bit myopic sometimes, where it's like, this is what you need to take in terms of supplement, this is what you need to do, and it's very regimented, and it's restricted to the physical body a lot, and that doesn't really meet with the fact that we're dynamic beings, like ever changing, ever flowing. Our hormones are always changing. And so as I sort of kind of expanded my practice and started getting more into enhancing my spiritual development, my personal life, and really bringing that into my practice, really not even being able to escape the truth of how much this body is alive and governed by the energetics of who we are
It is
and
my
everything
body.
that we're thinking and everything that we're breathing. And so, so much of my, if a woman comes to me now and she's like, I feel really tired, and I don't know, like I'd be fine with a handshake. Like, my husband wants to have sex all the time, and like even almost lost complete connection to that desire.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak to that now, not only just from my understanding from this perspective, but that I was her. Like, I was completely her,
Mm-hmm.
like I could be fine. And I went for a long time without having any access to my own sexuality, my own life force energy, my own creative force. And I see now in retrospect, like when that part was shut down and like not active in my life, oh my God, it was not the only thing that was shut down. Like, so much was shut down in me. And I was very, not only suppressed and oppressed and depressed, like in that state of being and in that state of my physiology, there was no way in hell my sex drive was going to go anywhere. I didn't deserve to feel good at that time. Like, my hormones weren't there. I wasn't living a lifestyle that was actually going to support that. I wasn't prioritizing my life in a certain way. I wasn't even choosing relationships in a certain way. Like, didn't even feel safe. So there's so much that can happen now. And so the conversation around, helping a woman reconnect and reignite her libido is like this like incredibly juicy conversation that has these many, many layers,
And
right?
I just want to make a quick note that while we're talking about this, and the difference between libido for the self, orgasm, pleasure, connecting to self, versus what the work that you were doing, helping people possibly get pregnant or prepare their body for being fertile. I would love to talk about the bridge between the physical body and the emotional body when it comes to connecting to our libido.
Beautiful. Did you were going to say something else before I
No,
started
no,
talking?
that's
Okay.
it. Let's go.
So, yeah, so there is that tendency, people come in and see me as a doctor, and it's not your typical thing where we're like, so what's happening in your level of your soul, right? And I may not use that language, but we do a deep dive. And so there's a tendency to, like you said, what's the bridge? Like, to separate between, is our sex drive just about hormones, right? So when someone is wanting to look at it from just a physical level, whether that's a man that comes in saying like, I want testosterone replacement therapy, because then I can, like get it up and like pleasure my wife, et cetera, or be more of a man, or a woman for all of the different reasons that she's going to want to do that too. Like, they automatically go to this place of like, well, I just need my hormones. And if I get my hormones unchecked, like I can have everything I want.
Yeah.
Right. And so whether that's bioidentical hormone replacement, and sometimes if we're just talking about the physical body, there's a lot to talk about there, right? Like, it's not just progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, like every hormone plays into it. how's your thyroid hormone? What's your blood sugar like? What's your stress hormones like? Because God knows, we all know, even just from a common sense place, you don't need to be a doctor to know this. Like, everything in our physiology changes in a dramatic, ostensible way when we're really stressed. Our digestion changes, right?
I call it the hidden killer.
Oh, totally. And then not so hidden most of the time, right? Like, we hide it from our own vision because we think we can't deal with it. So there's like that, there is a true, authentic physical component where if we have programmed and primed our body to not be in a flow state where there are, blockages and certain hormones are telling other parts to shut down, and there's that, right? That will definitely dampen libido. Circulation, I mean, sitting all day long, not moving your body. A lot of people who have pelvic congestion, for example, like, it's going to be really hard when there's no energy and no blood flow to that region of the body. So not to say that, like, there are both components. So I'll kind of talk about that, and then, like, we'll do them separate and then talk about the bridge. So then there's this part, like, okay, well, how about all those people that have their hormones totally dialed in and, like, their sex drive is shit, right? And so, like, we know that it's not just biology. And, there's so much research that will show that, like, literally most things are 80% psychology and 20% mechanics.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so if we call the physical body more of the matter and the mechanics, like, yes, hormones and getting your hormones dialed in is absolutely there, but that's more like 20%. Right. And so when we change the rest of it, that's in the emotional body and at the soul level, then we're really, really leveraging and training the body to kind of meet us there. And so in the emotional body, it's like when a woman is saying, like, well, I don't feel like sex, and, like, I really would like to feel more enlivened is a good way, right? Like, when we have a good sex drive, like, we're connected. We feel good in our body. We feel good about our life. We feel good about who we are. We're projecting into a future that actually sounds good. Like, if any of those elements are not there, there will be what people call like a brake on the libido, right? Instead of an accelerator. And so, like, and women are amazing like this because we naturally like to talk. and we have a lot of things that we're more culturally and socially primed to share, both what we're saying, but also in between words and with body language. And so, most of the time a woman is straight up telling me exactly what's in the way of why she can't get her mojo up and going, right? And it's like, well, how good do you feel about yourself? What do you even think about yourself? What does it mean if you don't have a good sex drive versus if you do? Where does that come in terms of, like, there's so much leverage in what we weigh things in our mind. And if all of a sudden we think we can never get there, or how hard it's going to be, like, there's so many blocks there. And so
there.
Yeah.
Interrupt that. When you were saying, while you're talking about this, are there women that will just have a lower sex drive in general? Or do you think we all start at a high, sex drive playing field and we can all get there? Are there people that just might not have as high of a sex drive in general?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I'll start off by saying that there is, like, a tyranny of comparison that can happen.
That's part of the questioning.
Yeah. And so it's like, what is a woman's normal true, I think what you're asking is, like, what's a normal true baseline for her sex drive? Is everybody more at this place where they just want to be bunnies? Okay. Like, I don't know. I don't know what each individual woman's satisfaction level is or what her natural drive would be. I do think that people have and are primed not only in their physiology, but from their life experience and whatever they were modeled and imprinted with when they were younger, like, around what things need to line up in order to have it maximized. And that varies woman to woman for sure. And so someone might have a higher sex drive, meaning she's more easily excited or aroused. And then perhaps she's even more aroused, but she can't actually get to the later stages. Maybe she shuts down, right? There's some people that it takes so much more to get aroused for different reasons. So, like, to give you a brief example, in college, some people could go into a coffee shop and study really well with loud music on. And, like, that works for them. I don't know this. I don't understand that. Like, I literally would be so distracted. Like, oh, I love this song. Like, like, and like, oh yeah, right. Focus. And so whether someone wants to label me with any BS diagnoses with that, like the reality is like what works for me, whether it's normal or not, is like I I have a high level of creativity. And so I need a certain level of less stimulation so I can maintain my focus.
Mm.
And then I can use that knowledge of myself without pathologizing it and actually use that to like enhance my sexual experience, right? Like,
Love.
oh, I can know that I can tune out anything else, like, oh, what I have to do tomorrow morning. Those things will kill my, like, I can be in the flow with my intimate partner, and like it would just like, sorry, I just like the train just like went
That's
on a
not my
different
to-do
track,
list.
right? As opposed to, ooh, instead of being like, why can't I do that because other women can't do this, I can start to say, okay, well, this is right or wrong. Like, this is something that I know about me, at least where I am right now. Like, how can I use that to enhance, to bridge, right? How do I use this part of my emotional, mental, and like that part of my mind, spirit body in my physical body? And so you can use that to leverage to enhance your own experience, right? So I can take that exact part and say, where do I put my focus? Oh, I can imagine energy sending down there. I can enhance my breath. I can use my imagination. And all of a sudden it's like, this feels really good, to, oh my God, this feels really good, only because I willed it so in my
I
mind
know.
and my breath and my energy flow, right? So I think it's like the comparison piece around, can any woman have a more enhanced sexual experience than what she's having now? Absolutely. That I would say across the board. And whether she gets there, there's many factors, right? Does that answer
And
your question?
yeah, and there's again, like you were saying, there's so many points we could stop and talk about and explore and move into,
Yeah.
and that did answer that question. And now, kind of moving into when we talk about these pressures we're putting on ourselves, our to-do lists, are the things that we have to do, and the when it comes around to orgasming, these pressures and assumptions around what we should be experiencing or what we could be experiencing. um,
Right.
I would love to just kind of talk into that, the assumptions, the what society suggests that we
Yeah.
should be experiencing compared to
Uh-huh.
what we know of our true bodies and what we can explore, like you're talking about, and how you guide your clients.
Totally. It's interesting because I think that the weight of your whole questioning there is really weighted on the word should.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just think of like libido and sex drive and satisfaction with sexuality, and that can mean not even just engaging in sexual activity. I mean, just like really satisfied with your own sexuality, just within your own energy being, and that flow moving through you in any moment. It does have to do with whether how much should is running your life. And I think of like any woman who wants to enjoy a really good sex life and be in touch with her sexuality has to be really in her body. And like, so when I talk about like embodiment, it's like, how much is a woman in her body? Because if she goes and she dissociates into her mind, or literally even out of body and out of mind into this other place because of sexual trauma or any other thing that might have caused that, like that's a block. That's a serious block. And so sometimes that can happen where a woman's like engaged and then it's like the eject button. But if we look at the embodiment of should, it's very constricted and very contracted, and like in that state there's no flow, there's no access. And so if it's like, oh, I should have bigger breasts, oh, I should not take so long to get aroused, or I should have less of this muffin top, or whatever it is, I should look a certain way, I should be a certain way, I should be more sexy, I should, you can shit all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
That shit
that
all over the place.
yeah, and I think that is like such a huge impediment to not only enjoying what's happening in the moment, if you are engaging sexually with yourself or with somebody else, but even just to get to the state where you could enjoy or even desire that, right? Because in the place of should, there's often like it activates this like undeserving part, right? It's like, oh, I should. So if I were to do that, I would then be here. It automatically activates this not enough place. And who's going to feel like, how is a woman going to feel like a goddess, if you will? I don't know if I like that word so much sometimes, but how is she going to sort of feel like the come take me energy, or like I can have this great experience if she's constantly like in this not enough place, right?
Yeah, and if she should be someplace but she
Right.
can't, then she's not enough. And again, she's
Yeah.
not worthy, or she'll never be able to get to that point.
Right.
Such a little
And
trap.
we're all aware how easily this can be activated, right, Alexandra? It's like you can, let's say you're totally in the flow with your partner, engaged sexually, and then all of a sudden your crazy monkey mind turns on and like has this thought of like, am I taking too long? Is he getting frustrated? Like, and it could be any little thing that we interpret based on a cue. Him, he's not looking at me, or his breathing changed, or like, who
Whatever
knows what
it
it
is.
is. And that, I think that activation of the, should it be different than how it is right now, is a habit. And that habit varies woman to woman. Right. And so it's like, again, those are all the energy up here. So how, part of what I help women is like, how can you stay in your experience no matter how uncomfortable it is? In order, you have to push through all the stuff that makes you uncomfortable so you can liberate all of you. Therefore, you can liberate your libido,
Mhm.
and you can enjoy all of it. It doesn't have to be good or bad. I can totally get angry and take responsibility for how I do that. And that's all okay. And the more we're all okay, everything feels good. And then it's like, you can even feel the excitement and the energy of that. That totally feeds the sex drive, right?
Also, these expectations that we put on ourselves, whether we hear a story from a friend who I orgasm all the time, or I've never orgasmed, or I don't know how to, or whatever that expectation we put on ourselves, it completely ruins or just impedes that ability to liberate.
Totally. You just said something that brought up when I was having my first child. I was pregnant, and I hear about these women who are having orgasmic births because there is that distinction in the brain between pain and pleasure are the two topmost motivating factors, and in the brain there's a little bit, people can feel pain and feel pleasure, right? There's like a fine line with there sometimes. So I was kind of committed to like, okay, that would be amazing. Like, instead of being afraid of birthing this baby, like, what if it felt so amazingly good? And you watch these videos of this gorgeous woman in Hawaii who's actually having it on, and you're like, okay, this is possible. Well, when I was having my child, I was like, oh, they're freaking liars. Like, this is like I was so unable to access that place. But if I stayed there into the I'm doing it wrong, like the expectation, like you said, it really cuts us off from just allowing whatever is, and whatever else we can reap and enjoy from what is.
Yeah. I am I saying this right, David Dita?
I mean, data is what I've heard, but what do
Dita.
I know? I think I think that's how he
Data.
goes
Yeah.
by. Data is the only way I've
Um,
heard it. Yeah.
Well, during our little pre-talk, you mentioned his name, and I did a little research. And one of the words he used when expressing his thoughts and feelings were connecting to our soft channels.
Mm,
I just
mm-hmm.
absolutely love that. Just
Yeah.
the experience that I have when I say that, when I think about that. Give us a sense of what that means and how we can connect to our soft channels.
Oh.
Teach me.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like, even just hearing soft channels, I
Mm.
would I would bet that like most women listening to this in the future, whatever stage, whatever age they're in, like soft channels, we all know that the inherent part of our feminine wants to be open and soft.
Mm.
And it is the guarding, and it is all the protective strategies from past experiences or what we imagine might happen that create kind of that like edgy, right? That edgy, not only in our speech, but even just in our energetics and in our physical body. And so I may not be able to answer this in the way that, Data would like
Oh, yeah.
approve of it in his
Okay.
language. So, but, I think of the fact that like, if a woman wants to be open and receptive and feel the energy of the feminine essence, which is all about flow, as opposed to the masculine, which is all about finality, right? So he talks, and I love his work. I think he distills things beautifully, and I would recommend any man or woman reading his work and kind of doing a deep dive. I'm actually doing a deep dive amongst God knows how many other people with him on like live sessions, where it's like the masculine. And when I say the masculine, I don't even mean it in a man, obviously. Like every woman and every man has a masculine and feminine. It's more of an energetics, but it's about consciousness and presence. And so if in a woman, the soft channeling, it's like, well, I don't feel very good, or I don't feel like he really wants me. Like, are we opening in receptivity? Are we inviting what we want in, right? Like the man has a penis. It's the penetrator, and the woman has a vagina, which is the opening to receive. Yeah. And so it's like, are these lips and those lips like soft and open, you know, like, and this is when, like, in an instant, you know, attraction can change, polarity can change in an interaction between, you know, I'm just going to use the heterosexual for now, just because we're talking about it in form, but like, is there a way where in the soft channeling, like, how relaxed is your mouth and your lips? Like, what's your breathing like? Is it soft? Is it sharp? Is there an opening? And I'm deliberately even slowing down my breath to like invite the opening. Because when we're here,
I know,
right?
my jaw's softening, my body is softening.
And even then, so like, you know, people tense up right before as they're trying to enhance an orgasm, but it's often what blocks it, right? So it's like, oh, and all of a sudden, if we imagine there's like more of like, you know, people call it the opening of a flower, or like, you can imagine your hips opening. You can imagine that, like, yes, come here. Without the soft channeling of what I take that when I hear that is, there's more of like it's more hard, it's more rigid, it's more closed. And then there's not receptivity and open. You can't penetrate the feeling of joy. You can't penetrate the ecstasy. You can't get there. So, you know, when he talks about maintaining the softness, like, are we actually in a state that not only exudes our radiance to invite that in, but are we soft where we can open and be like, oh yeah, right?
I love that. And that invitation to others, and also that invitation to self.
Yeah.
Can we invite ourselves to touch ourselves, to experience ourselves, to engage with ourself? I talk a lot about, you know, with my clients, the self and self-healing, and being okay with self to then invite others to be with you. Do you think it starts, is it like the chicken or the egg? Do you think it starts with self, opening up, connecting with self, or and then you are able to experience others, or is it the other coming in and sharing that experience with you to
I love that question. I love that question. And you know, I probably have different answers depending on like what context, but
yeah.
I think it can go both ways. I do think that it can be the chicken or the egg, so to speak. So let me just say two things about that. I think that if a woman is disconnected with herself, there are reasons. And to keep the conversation kind of simple and use just a term that maybe is a little bit hyperbolic, like there's some kind of trauma there, right? And trauma can be healed within here, but it's also beautifully healed in relationship with another person. So let's say a woman is really, really shut down sexually. Being with a partner in an intimate way that provides safety and exploration to release some of that and to get into that soft channeling and to be with self in a safe way, to be in context with someone else. Like, I can be all of me and witnessed here, cherished here, whatever words that want to come in with that. And maybe that gets healed in relationship. That's certainly one way. So she can find access to a reconnection with herself through the healing of that relationship. That's certainly one avenue that can happen. And then I think that a lot of women will know we'll call it the potential danger of doing that route, right? If you were to choose that without working on self in this relationship, there's a lot of risk there, right? Because this is like, you'll kind of choose to do whatever because your own worthiness and your own feeling okay about yourself is tethered to this relationship and whatever else this person. It's like, here, tell me, like, you're handing it over, right? And so I think that relationship with someone else in an intimate partnership can help grow this relationship here. In the contrast, I think that there's a lot of strength and like sustenance and magic that can happen in, okay, I'm going to like really heal the relationship with myself. And that way I'm really comfortable in activating what feels good. I deserve to feel good. Oh, this is what makes me feel good. Not what makes her feel good or anything else, but like, oh yeah, and this is how good it feels to feel good. And I can give this gift to myself. And when we know more about what we like and we can feel comfortable expressing our preferences and all that stuff, then we can bring all that juicy stuff to somebody else, right? So I think that it's probably more of a preference, and some people maybe have dabbled with the former and like, oh, I can't do that anymore, right? So I'm going to just like go on a no man diet or whatever for a while, or no woman diet if you're, that orientation, and like just be with me and learn to be with me, learn to like, let this be enough, learn to fall in love here, learn to enjoy here, learn to, self-pleasure here. So that way I can take that and it can just be enhanced with somebody else.
So it's a both and.
Totally. I love it.
We are coming to the end of this really amazing conversation. I would love to have another one at some point where we can dive further into to more of this juicy topic. The last question I have for you is, what do you love about your job?
Oh my gosh. I'm so deeply passionate and committed to helping people literally untame themselves, and to understand that the untamed, authentic version of themselves and their own inner radiance, whether that's a man or a woman, just so happens that I feel like a lot of my practice is women, but really just to help them bridge to the place where they yearn and they desire and they deserve and seek out in the ways that are not helpful. Like we're often really clear what we want, and we can't get there when we have a bunch of BS stories, right? Belief system and bullshit, right? For why we can't get there. It's going to be too hard. That'll never happen to me. It happens to other people. They're lucky, or all of the things that run us. And to be free from that, and how to help them understand the power of embodiment, because our body is like completely alive and aligning with us at all times. And so we live in a culture where it is very symptom focused and very much on what do we need to do to fix things? What do we need to do that? And it's like, nothing needs to be even healed. Like they just need to be held. They just need to be seen and witnessed and loved. And the body is like a little baby, right? And it's pretty much tantruming out to get our attention most of the time. And so if we're listening to it from a different place of like, oh, thank you for showing me where I'm neglecting you, and the ways I'm not honoring myself and honoring this temple and this vessel. And in doing so, I'm not even savoring life. Like there's so many different ways where, there's different layers of health and happiness. I think we all seek it. And sometimes we have very low ceilings on that for various reasons. So my greatest passion is to like, blow the ceiling off. And help people get to that place where, it's kind of funny because what's coming up is that Meg Ryan's beautiful scene in When Harry Met Sally, right? Because so like I love helping women get and reactivate their libido, but it's, in all honesty, it's really a process of helping them to be like yes to themselves and to life.
Yes to life.
Because if they can't see where they're saying no to themselves and no to their life, and how that's making them feel sick and actually ailing them at a deep level, but actually also showing up in their body in like chronic disease. So I feel like my passion is to bridge the gap between, energy medicine and like straight allopathic, even if it's natural medicine that's just looking at just the body, that mind body connection is so alive and real. And if a person can really own that, know that, and live that in a way that they can leverage, in a way that they can like totally harness that, they can have everything, they can live the life they want. And it's going to take a different form perhaps than what they imagine and what they think they should want to be happy. But they've they've just liberated themselves to enjoy what is and what they can create and manifest, right? So
Love that.
yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Elizabeth, for joining me. I hope if you're listening to this, you have stepped further into liberating your libido, liberating your energy. You can listen to this and more at greentreeayurveda.com, and I will see you next time.
All right.